People say betrayal comes from enemies. I say, it comes from those who once called you home. I remember the day everything changed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't chaotic. In fact, it was eerily quiet, almost like the calm before a hurricane that would rip my soul apart. I was standing in the exact spot where we used to laugh, dream, and build the castles of forever. And yet, that day, he walked away like none of it mattered. I didn't cry at first. I couldn't, because sometimes pain goes too deep for tears. It burrows itself into the bones, into the breath, and into the beating of your heart. My hands were shaking, but not from the cold wind that brushed against my skin. It was something else, something unexplainable. Like watching your world shatter and not having the strength to pick up even a single piece. He didn't say much. Just a few carefully chosen words, like daggers dipped in honey. Words that sounded sweet but sliced my spirit in silence. "You'll understand one day," he said. I didn't. Not then. Not for a long, long time. He left. And with him, he took a version of me I had spent years building. The happy one. The trusting one. The version that believed love was forever and promises were sacred. He took all that and walked away into a life that didn't include me. For years, I wondered what I did wrong. I searched every moment, replayed every conversation, reread every message. I begged the universe for closure that never came. And in that silence, I lost myself, or so I thought. But what he didn't know, what no one expected, was that the silence he left behind would become my training ground. That pain? It would forge me. That loss. It would teach me to find things no one could ever steal again, myself. And years later, when the world had moved on, and he thought I was just a forgotten chapter, he saw me. And what he saw left him speechless. Because I wasn't just living, I was glowing. But before we get there, you need to know what really happened. Because this isn't just a story of betrayal. It's a story of becoming, of falling apart, so you can rise in ways that make the people who left wish they'd stayed. My name is Alina, but the girl I used to be, she feels like a stranger now. You see, there was a time I believed that love could fix anything. I was soft-hearted, hopeful, and hungry for connection. I believed in happy endings, even when the chapters were full of pain. My world wasn't perfect, but it was honest, and then he walked into it. His name was Zion. To the world, he was magnetic. The kind of man who could light up a room with a single glance. The kind of man who knew how to make someone feel seen, even in a crowd. But to me, he was more than all that. He was my person. My safe place. My soft space to fall. Zion didn't just speak. He understood. He'd listen to my silence like it was a language only he could interpret. He knew the story behind my favorite songs, the reasons I slept with the light on, and the way my hands trembled whenever I felt like I didn't belong. And he made me believe that maybe, just maybe, I did belong with him. We weren't just in love. We were entwined. Our love didn't come like a firestorm. It came like a quiet sunrise. Slow. Gentle. But with the power to light up my entire life. And I let it. I let him in deeper than anyone had ever gone. I told him things I had never said out loud. I shared dreams I had never dared to believe in. I opened the door to every wound, every scar, every shadow. He said he wasn't scared of my darkness. He said he'd stay. But promises are cheap when they're not meant to be kept. What I didn't see was how his affection started to shift, subtly, slowly, like the tide pulling away from the shore. He became distant, quiet. Smiles were forced. Words became shallow. And yet I kept convincing myself that it was just a phase, just stress, just life. Until one day, I found the truth I didn't go looking for. A truth that shattered everything. It wasn't another woman. It was betrayal of another kind. He had been using the deepest parts of me, the secrets I entrusted him with, as tools. For pity. For manipulation. For his own image. While I was pouring my love into him, he was painting a version of me to others that wasn't real, twisting my vulnerability into weakness, my loyalty into obsession. People started looking at me differently. Friends turned cold. Some even disappeared without warning. And I couldn't understand why until I heard what Zion had been saying. She's too emotional. She's always playing the victim. I try my best, but she's unstable. Each word was a dagger. Because they didn't just come from anyone, they came from him. The one I trusted most. The one I defended when no one else did. The one I gave everything to. And when I confronted him, he didn't deny it. He didn't even apologize. He simply shrugged and said, "I needed to protect myself." That moment broke me in a way I didn't know a person could break. And yet somehow I still blamed myself. For loving too much. For trusting too easily. For not seeing the red flags disguised as deep conversations. I disappeared after that. Not physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I shut down. I cut myself off. I built walls so high even I couldn't see over them. I didn't want love. I didn't want friends. I didn't want healing. I just wanted numbness. But life has a strange way of teaching you that numbness is a cage. And sooner or later, your soul starts pounding at the walls, begging to feel again, even if it hurts. And so, piece by piece, I started rebuilding. I went back to the places that used to make me cry and sat in silence until the tears turned into strength. I looked in the mirror and forced myself to see something, someone worthy. I wrote letters to my old self, the one who loved blindly, and I forgave her. Because she didn't know. Because she tried her best. And slowly, the girl who vanished began to return. But this time, she was different. Wiser. Stronger. Softer, yes, but no longer fragile. I met new people. I found new dreams. I fell in love again, but not with another person. With myself. With my journey. With the woman I was becoming. And somewhere in the distance, Zion faded into a shadow. A name I no longer flinched at. A memory that no longer controlled me. Until the day our paths crossed again. But that is for later. The moment I saw him again, everything I had rebuilt trembled. It was a chance encounter, or so I thought, a random coffee shop, a crowded street corner. But the universe had a cruel sense of irony. There he was, Zion. The man who had once been my world, now a stranger with a familiar face. His eyes caught mine for a split second, and in that flash, 1,000 memories flooded me. The laughter, the whispered promises, the nights spent dreaming together. But also the lies, the betrayal, and the silence. He looked shocked too. Not at seeing me, but at how different I looked. The glow he once dimmed was now shining fiercely. I was no longer the scared girl hiding behind walls. I was a woman who had been broken but refused to stay broken. For a brief moment, I wanted to say something. To tell him that I knew everything. To ask how he could do what he did. To demand the closure I never got. But the words caught in my throat, tangled in years of pain and healing. Instead, I walked away. But that moment didn't pass quietly. It was the spark that reignited an old fire, one that had been buried but never truly died. After that encounter, strange things started happening. I began receiving messages, anonymous at first, little hints that someone was watching me, keeping tabs. A photo slipped under my door. A whisper in a group chat I wasn't part of. Rumors swirling again, as if the past was trying to claw its way back. My heart raced, caught between fear and anger. Was this a game? Was someone trying to hurt me again? Or was Zion behind this? The truth hit harder than I expected. It was. The man who betrayed me had started spreading stories, twisting facts, painting me as unstable, dangerous even. And people believed him. People I once called friends began treating me like a stranger. Doors closed. Opportunities vanished. And I was back in that familiar place, alone, misunderstood, fighting shadows that refused to fade. I wanted to fight back. I wanted to scream the truth. But how do you prove the truth when everyone has already made up their mind? When your words are drowned out by lies louder than your own voice? Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. The tension wasn't just external, it was internal. Every morning I woke up with a pit in my stomach. Every night I lay awake, battling the doubt creeping back into my mind. Was I really broken? Was I really the villain in the story? In moments of silence, I replayed our last conversations. I analyzed every smile, every touch, every word. Was I naive? Blind? Weak? But I refused to give up. Not again. I started documenting everything: texts, emails, conversations. I reached out to those who still believed in me, clung to their support like lifelines. Slowly, I built a new defense, not just for me, but for the woman I was becoming. And then, just when I thought I had reached my limit, the unexpected happened. Zion reached out, not with apologies or explanations, but with a proposition. He wanted to meet. The offer was a trap, I knew, but it was also an opportunity, a chance to confront the past face to face, to finally get the answers I craved. I said yes. The day of the meeting arrived, and the air was thick with anticipation. Every step I took toward that cafe was heavy with memories and doubts. What would he say? Would he regret? Would he finally admit the truth? When I sat across from him, the silence was deafening. He looked at me, not with the tenderness I once knew, but with a mixture of guilt and something else I couldn't place. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said quietly. "But you did," I replied. "More than you realize." He sighed. "There's more to it than you know." And there it was, the twist I never saw coming. His betrayal wasn't just about us. It was tied to secrets, mistakes, and choices that had spiraled out of control. He wasn't the villain I thought he was. He was a man trapped in his own web of lies, trying to survive. As he unfolded his story, I felt a strange mix of emotions: anger, sorrow, pity. The lines between victim and betrayer blurred. But the real shock came when he confessed what he had done years ago, and why. It wasn't to destroy me. It was to protect someone else. Someone we both cared about. I sat back, stunned. The world I had built in my mind shattered again, this time in a different way. The betrayal I had felt was real, but it was tangled in sacrifices and choices I never knew about. And now, the question remained: could I forgive? Could I move forward? Because whatever happened next would change everything. The moment I heard his words, my mind spun in a whirlwind of confusion and disbelief. The man who had shattered my world years ago, the man I had sworn to never trust again, was now asking for understanding, asking for forgiveness, asking me to see beyond the betrayal. The cafe around us blurred as I sat there, heart pounding, eyes searching his face for any hint of deception. Could the person who left me broken actually be telling the truth? Could there really be a reason that explained everything, a reason that changed the story entirely? I wanted to yell, to accuse, to demand answers. But all I could do was listen. Zion's voice trembled as he spoke. I was protecting her, protecting us. There were things you didn't know. Things I couldn't tell you without risking everything. I remembered those nights, the silence that stretched between us, the growing distance I couldn't explain. It was all a lie, a painful, complicated lie. The truth was darker than I imagined. He told me about debts, threats, and a dangerous situation involving someone close to both of us. A choice he made, terrible, gut-wrenching, but necessary in his eyes, to sacrifice his own happiness and our relationship for their safety. I felt the weight of his confession like a heavy storm crashing down, shaking the foundation of my beliefs. The pain of betrayal was still there, but now it was tangled with empathy and sorrow. "How could you keep this from me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Because I loved you," he said. "I thought if you knew the truth, it would destroy you even more. I wanted to protect you." For the first time in years, tears filled my eyes. Not just from pain, but from the complexity of love and sacrifice. But the story didn't end there. Zion handed me an envelope, a collection of documents, messages, and photos that proved everything he had said. Proof of his struggles, the threats he faced, and his desperate attempts to shield me. I sat in stunned silence, feeling the past and present collide. Days passed after our meeting, and I found myself torn between resentment and understanding. The betrayal was real, but so was the love beneath it. I realized that forgiveness was not a simple act but a journey, a process of healing and acceptance. I began reaching out to those I had lost contact with, explaining my side of the story. Slowly, the walls of mistrust started to crumble. Friends who had believed the lies returned, offering support and compassion. The rumors faded, replaced by the truth. And then an unexpected message arrived. It was from Zion. "I want to make things right," it said. "If you'll let me." The choice lay before me: hold on to the past, the pain, and the betrayal, or open my heart to the possibility of healing and new beginnings. I took a deep breath and decided to face the future without fear. Our paths would never be the same, but the years of silence had taught me one thing. Strength isn't about never breaking, it's about rising every time you do. I stood up from that cafe table with clarity and peace. The wounds were still healing, but the shock that once paralyzed me had transformed into a quiet power. I was no longer the girl betrayed and lost. I was a woman who had reclaimed her story, and in doing so, left them all shocked. Sometimes, life's harshest betrayals feel like an ending, but often, they are just the beginning of a new story, a story of strength, growth, and unexpected redemption. My journey from being lost and betrayed to standing tall and shocking those who doubted me is proof that the deepest wounds can heal. The hardest lessons teach us about forgiveness, resilience, and the power of reclaiming our own narrative. Ask yourself, when someone betrays your trust, what will you choose? To stay broken in bitterness or rise stronger with wisdom? Healing is not easy. It requires courage to face the pain, honesty to confront the past, and grace to forgive, not always for others, but for yourself. Because holding on to anger only chains you to the past. If my story teaches you anything, let it be this: your value is never defined by others' betrayal. You have the power to turn your darkest moments into your greatest comeback. So, take a deep breath, gather your strength, and step forward. The future is waiting, and it's brighter than you think. And remember, sometimes the ones who betray us are shocked the most when we rise unbroken, unstoppable, and shining brighter than ever before.